Hello, everyone. This is another episode of Obsidian Radio with your host Najee, a show dedicated to opening our minds to other realities. Please listen, learn, and enjoy. And hello, everyone. This is episode 2 of Obsidian Radio. On this episode, we'll be speaking about Afrofuturism and the world of black sci-fi with Mr. Floyd Webb, the creator of Afrofuturism849.com. Nice to have you on.
How you doing today?
Pretty good. I'm actually looking at your site right now, where you have the partner page, you and Yatasha.
I'm sorry, say it again?
I'm looking at your site right now, where I'm seeing where it says partner under it, and I see the bio for you and Yatasha Womack. I just want to go through that a little bit, if you don't mind.
Okay, fine.
And part of the team of Afrofuturism849.com, Floyd Webb. His background includes the global work in cinema, photojournalism, publishing, and advertising. And he's also contributes to the convergence of skills of producer, designer, and consultant for the internet. His past work includes associate producer of the award-winning Julie Dash film, Daughters of the Dust, 1992. Local producer of the American Masters film, The World at Nat King Cole, 2006. Producer and director of music videos, short documentaries, and 3D animation projects. He has also worked with filmmakers John Akomfrah, Clair Bourne, and Pierre Bekolo, and also assisted Dave McKean in his early filmworks. And he's recently began the development of the timeline of all aspects of Afrofuturism since the 19th century. Nice. So,
yeah.
I'm looking at the site.
Gee.
Oh, say what now?
I said, gee, I'm almost impressed.
So you've been doing this for decades, right?
Well, it's not that I've been doing it for decades. Here's the thing. Afrofuturism is an old term from the 1990s. from about 1993. It was part of a series of essays that were done by a guy named Mark Theory. And he had, and I was introduced to Mark Theory in like 1992 in a series of articles he had written about culture jamming, right?
And what is that?
And well, let me see how I can explain it so simply. Culture jamming is basically was exploring how we use new media and the internet to serve something other than corporate culture. Right?
Okay.
It was essentially a tactic used by anti-consumers to disrupt or to subvert media culture and mainstream cultural institutions. And they came up with a whole series of like anti-corporate culture activist media. Okay, and in his investigations and explorations of different kinds of culture jamming, he came across a theme in black music, in all different forms of black music. It seems there was a theme of outer space, from jazz to soul and into funk. So he discovered this tendency that already existed and had been around for years, right? I mean, he didn't even know how deep the story went. He was looking specifically at music. So he looked at this and he called it Afrofuturism, right? So before that, Sun Ra was the pope of Afrofuturism.
Sun Ra. Right? I'm not sure who that is.
Are you familiar with Sun Ra?
Not really, no.
Okay. Sun Ra is a musician. He was born in the 30s, born in the early 1900s, I think, about maybe 1914. I can confirm that for you in a minute. But Sun Ra was a jazz musician. who, he was born May 22nd, 1914. And he was a composer. He was involved in electronic music in the 1940s, right? He came in right behind theremin. He was exploring theremin and all these different instruments in order to hear these things. But he said that
right behind who again?
Theremin. Leo theremin. The theremin is an electronic instrument that's controlled by body movement.
Okay.
You control the sound and modulation by moving your hands, but by the proximity of your hands and fingers to these two antennas, to these two transmitters. It's a transmitter receiver, and as you move your hands back and forth, the tone changes. If you've seen the Day the Earth Stood Still,
I've seen a part of it here.
The music in the Day the Earth Stood Still is by a theremin.
Okay.
Now, Sun Ra's idea was he began to explore ancient Egypt, but he always felt this. He always had this affinity for outer space. He said he was abducted by aliens back in his early teens, and it's real funny because I talked to somebody who was an abduction expert, and Sun Ra has a medical condition that was consistent with what happened to abductees, right?
And what is that?
So, well, okay, space alien. Well, that's kind of hard to get into.
Okay.
In this talk, that's another talk.
Yeah.
But this thing about abductees, about people abducted, and they're tampered with. You know what I mean? They abducted people and they tamper with. They tamper with sexual organs. They tamper with. They're checking their respiratory systems. It was always for
sometimes there be chips inside of them.
Right. Like it wasn't they were grabbing.
Hello? Oh.
Checking the nature of humanity, I guess.
Wait, say that again. You cut out a little bit.
And Rod claimed that he was part of that. But at the same time, outer space was a metaphor that Sun Ra used, if you want to look at it another way, in order to escape racism, right? He decided he wasn't from this planet, that this planet was a devil planet and he was from the heavens, and that he was going to return. He came here to, he took on a very nationalist mission to save his people. If anybody wants to get a clear vision of who Sun Ra is, you should look at a film called Space is the Place.
Space is the place.
Space is the place.
Okay.
Space is the Place was made in the 1970s. It turns out being a funky jazz, sci-fi, blaxploitation film. It is hilarious. Okay. It's surreal. It is surreal. But when you really listen to the messages in this film, it'll knock you over. But Sun Ra left Birmingham, Alabama, came to Chicago, and it was in Chicago where he got in touch and became a member of the psychic and there was a spiritualist community here. Okay, you got gangsters, you had spiritualism, and you had the occult. Right. And there was gangsters around, and there was gangsters in Chicago who was involved in all three, right? Really? And Sun Ra hooked up with a couple of these guys. Yeah, and Sun Ra got hooked up with these guys. Okay. This is a science fiction story in itself, right? Okay. So Ra is hanging around. And like they used to have like a speaker's corner in Washington Park. They would talk about Egypt. They would talk about the nature of the universe. They would talk about rockets and spaceships. All of these things in the 1950s. This is the group of black people standing outside on a Saturday and Sunday afternoon debating all of these different topics revolving around space, Africa, and black nationalism. Can you imagine this?
That's an interesting combination.
So Ra carried this a little bit, but Ra was really a peaceful, he's a real peaceful cat. You can see all of his music on YouTube. This is, that's why YouTube is the best thing on the damn internet. It is. Because any question you have about music, it's answered right there. I've very rarely been able to not find something I was looking for. So you guys ought to keep that in mind. But Sun Ra sort of sits at the center of Afrofuturism before it's named in the 20th century. Okay. Ra died in 1993. At the same time, Deary names this tendency that he sees Afrofuturism. But going beyond Sun Ra, we look at literature, right? We look at the writing at Afrofuturist writing. It goes back into the 19th century, and the writers these writers in their effort to fight against slavery and to uplift the not only the social conditions but the spiritual and psychic conditions of the race, began to write stories about escaping from these places and creating spaces that were anti-imperial, that were anti-imperialist.
Creating what again? You kind of broke up there.
Oh, I'm sorry. Hold on. Let me just adjust my microphone connection. I'm gonna plug it to the Ethernet instead of using my Wi-Fi. Hold on, just a second, okay?
No problem. Let me see. What was the name of the guy that named it again? Can't remember.
Mark Deary.
Mark Deary. Okay.
Yeah, Mark Deary. If people go to Afrofuturism849, and they can go to the AF849 timeline.
I'm looking at it right now.
They'll see everything there, right? Mm-hmm. I mean, it's all. I laid it out there so that people can get an idea of what I'm talking about, right? Because it's like, in 1859, Martin Delany, who was a real famous black political leader, he began publishing this series, Blake, or the Huts of America, as a serial, right? This is in 1859. Mm-hmm. The subject of the novel is a successful slave revolt in the southern states and the founding of a new black country in Cuba. Samuel Delany, another black science fiction writer, described it as about as close to sci-fi style alternative history novel as you can get. Serialization ended prematurely, but the entire novel was eventually published in serial form in the Weekly Anglo-African in weekly installments from November 1861 to May 1862. All right. Now that's it. Now that's the 1800s. Right. People have no idea. This is, hold on, let me just go a little bit further up here. Then in 1892, then in 1892, there's a novel by a woman by the name of Frances Harper. Okay. She's probably one of the leading women poets, leading black woman poet in the 19th century. She did a story that was described as African-American utopian fiction, or the account of its vision of a peaceful and equal polity of men and women, whites and former slaves. Okay. Like I said, this is now that's 1892. 1899, you get this other article by Sutton Briggs called Imperial. And this thing deals with a violent takeover of Texas for African Americans by a secret black government. Then moving on further, there's an article called "The Conjure Woman" by Charles Chestnut, who's dealing with the magic and the spiritualism, right? Imperium. All right, hold on a minute. Imperium.
I see all three of them right now.
Yeah. So I could go on and on, right, about how Afrofuturism figures into literature. It's like every generation somebody has this idea, all up to George Schuyler, who in the 1930s creates a series called Black Empire. And Black Empire is about this badass Dr. Belsimus, who is this like mystic, who's this mysterious black leader who plans a who plans a takeover of Africa from the colonialist forces. And how he does that is he starts a war between the Jews and the Catholics and Americans. Right? This dude invents a fax machine in this thing. He comes up with energy. He comes up with a self-renewing energy source. He has his own air force that's captained by a blackman pilot, kind of like T. Coleman. You know, I mean, it's amazing. And this dude is a right-wing guy, by the way. He did this series to make fun of Marcus Garvey, and actually ended up making some very good Afrofuturist fiction. You know? And so these are all the people who came along before our modern sci-fi writers. You know, people like Sam Delaney. People like Sam Delaney, Octavia Butler. Ishmael Reed, who else is there?
Have you ever heard of Cthulhu?
Stephen Barnes, huh?
Have you ever heard of Cthulhu? I think that's how you pronounce it. This weird octopus creature that was written about in the 1920s. Okay, I can't remember the author's name.
No, I haven't. There's a lot to discover out here.
Yeah, because what I find interesting here now is that this is predating a lot of the people that are considered the forerunners of science fiction. Do you notice that? So now I'm like, okay, who actually created science fiction then?
Well, I don't know if you can say exactly who created science fiction. Science fiction is a name we gave to stories that dealt with science in a fictional manner. Okay? Before that, you had the fantastic. You know, like Mark Twain came up with things that could be with ideas that could be considered science fiction. But even more so, during that period of American history, as we entered the industrial age, a lot of science fiction was being born. You know, so you've got the fantastic submarines, you've got the novel submarine being invented in fiction. You've got these ideas after the Civil War of a dominant force in the world that's going to, for good, that'll stop people from going to war. You know, this guy, Captain Nemo, right? And don't forget, we had Edgar Rice Burroughs, who's from right here in Chicago, created the John Carter Mars series at the turn of the century. I mean, there's all this kind of stuff, but at the same time, there's a parallel move. I mean, for all human beings, it's sort of parallel the development in literature to look at speculative fiction that creates alternative worlds, right? Not only among white writers, but among black writers too, because it's about humanity. You know, race is a invention. Race is a mythology. Race doesn't really exist. We all agree that it exists, and it exists as a social reality, but it's not. Race is the biggest bunch of science fiction that's ever been invented.
It doesn't really match genetics when you look at it a little bit more deeply, but that's the whole foundation. I was saying that when you look at the whole racial thing, it really is more socialized. It's not really as scientific as people think it is.
Right, it is a scientific. It's totally socialization, you know? So I'm giving you all that background so that we understand that when we say Afrofuturism, we're talking about a tendency in African American culture that's a human reaction to society, to one's place in the world, and one's need to create a better world.
Right.
You know? So Afrofuturism is nothing but a universal expression of humanity's need to be free, need for peace, and need for a better world. But that's just me talking. What do I know?
How long did it take for you to make this timeline? When did you start it, and are you still going on it or no?
I'm still going on it. I just haven't had time to hit it. I got so many things to do.
Oh, when did you start?
I did it out of my head in about three nights.
Oh, really?
Just based on the stuff. Yeah, that's just based on the stuff that I just kind of knew from just living. I'm 61, so I better know something.
How
But the good news is it's all on the internet now. That's the good news. I was able to find all those books. The other thing is people should read Dark Matter.
Written by who?
I'll tell you in a minute. It's a series of essays. I hope you edit this real good. I'm going to give you good statements as soon as I find it. I won't know.
Dark Matter
by Sherry Thomas.
By Sherry Thomas.
Yeah. People should. Okay, I'm going to give it to you so that it's easily edited. People should really try to read Dark Matter. It's 2 books by Sherry Thomas.
And what's she talk about?
It's a series bringing together the works of black science fiction and fantasy writers. It was named like Notable Book of the Year, the first volume. You know, you can go to Amazon, look it up. I mean, it's really important, I think, for people to really read and like study this stuff, because she brings together all of this information about this tendency in African American literature towards science fiction that people never knew about. The writers that I was just talking about from the 19th century. That's where she exposes that to a lot of people. I had different professors tell me about these books, so I told them that I like science fiction, and they would suggest reading these things. I was able to find some of these books. You know, there's a film by Harry Belafonte called The World of Flesh and the Devil, about the last man on Earth. You know, something happens and the world is destroyed. The cities are there, but the people disappear. He was in a mine when it happened, right? And all the people disappear, and he's the last man on Earth. When it turns out the last woman on Earth is a white woman. And while they're getting to know one another in this new world, a white man turns up.
What's the name of it again?
The World of Flesh and the Devil. Okay. And matter of fact, I think it's coming on TCM tonight. Or Turner, it's coming on the Turner movie channel. I think it's coming on this evening. The World of Flesh and the Devil. Now, what's interesting about that is, Harry Belafonte's production company produced this film. W.E.B. Du Bois wrote a novel called The Comet, which deals with the same subject in pretty much the same way.
Written by who again? You said it's called The Comet?
W.E.B. Du Bois. Yeah, so this is a short science fiction story that was written by him in 1920. Okay, and it discusses the relationship between Jim Davis, black man, and Julia, a wealthy white woman, after the comet hits New York and unleashes toxic gases which kill everyone except them. Okay,
interesting.
And this is written in 1920. Okay. So this tendency, man, of thinking people, this is where thinking people go. They do what-if scenarios in their heads. You know, people that are engaged in creativity tend to want to see or like make of the world. So if they can't do it in reality, they do it in their heads.
Okay.
It's the imagination. You know what I mean? We have to have, when you have a rich imagination, that's where you go. You know, the lack of education limits the potential of imagination. You know, to the point that I think the way that the educational system is going in this country, that it's intentional. You know, eliminate the capacity for imagination,
exactly,
and you can solve a lot of problems, right? Because if you look at the generation before us, it's a generation that valued education in the immediately after slavery. Everything that happened in the 60s was a result of white folks being freed from captivity and striving to become Americans in this country. And when we got close to being there, they said, no, this ain't what this is about. This is about white supremacy. You know? So when you look at from like 1919 on, it's downhill. Because we had our own Wall Street, man. I mean, it was amazing the amount of black businesses that existed between the end of the Civil War the beginning of the 20th century.
Are you talking about Tulsa or Rosewood?
By the second decade. Tulsa.
Tulsa, Oklahoma, and Rosewood, Florida, was it? Or was that California?
Yeah, people know about Rosewood because of the film, and that's a real. And I can't speak a whole lot on Rosewood. I really haven't seen the film.
Okay. Neither have I. I'm just asking.
You know, but I do know the story of Tulsa, and I've been to Tulsa, and I've talked to people down there.
Oh.
Because what people don't understand about Tulsa is that when they destroyed Tulsa, that action was repeated around the country with black businesses all around the country. So it was dangerous to be a successful businessman, to be a successful black businessman in these places, right? A lot of people ended up leaving the South and coming up to the North. I had a friend who tells me about how her family, you know, her father had a successful business, and they got ran out of town. And she remembers bullets whizzing by the car. She was on the floor of the car, and they left that place. And her father brought them up to Chicago, and they bought a mansion over on the west side of Chicago, right by where United Center is, you know, where the Bulls play. Big, beautiful building, man. And there's all and there's a lot of stories like this, but we haven't seen them. A lot of them have those. A lot of those stories haven't been told.
I didn't know that. So you're saying that was done repeatedly for like hundreds of times after the Tulsa incident?
Oh yeah.
Huh.
Oh yeah. Not like they didn't bomb them from the air.
Right, but like burning the actual
building. But it was just like burning out the businesses.
Okay.
You know, accusing them of like undercutting, having businesses seized.
Now, let me see.
See, I'm not a fictional sci-fi guy. I'm about science fiction that reflects reality and that reflects and sort of that creates an inspiration to build new worlds, right? Not just to live on paper, man, but to bring this stuff bring it into fruition. You know.
Now, you were saying earlier that, as far as you know, we've always had science fiction or science fiction writers before it was called science fiction.
Before it was called science fiction. Well, let's go back. Let's go way back. Let's look at creativity myths.
Okay.
What are creativity myths with science fiction? No, I'm not trying to step on nobody's religion.
Okay.
But they're all fantastic stories of people who can fly with incredible powers.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So, in looking at, let's take there's a book by Credo Mutwa, a South African Nganga, or a South African healer and mystic. Credo Mutwa, it's called Indaba, My Children. And in Indaba, My Children, he tells the origins of the South African people.
Oh, how do you spell that? In Credo Mutwa, and the name of his book was called what?
Mutwa. CREDOMUTWA.
And it was called Indubo?
No. I'm sorry. Indaba.
Oh, Indaba.
NDABA.
And it's talking about the creation mythology of the South Africans? What was it about?
It basically says that the people from that the people originally came from the stars, and they lived in a body of land out in the middle of the Atlantic Ocean. And when the land sank, they were rescued by dolphins and whales and brought to the shores of South Africa. And these were the first South Africans. These were the first. Hold on a second. So Credo Mutwa was a Zulu from South African province of Natal, and he was a tribal historian, and he's an oral historian, and he talks about the creation of the great mother that created the human race. That's where it all starts. There's battles, there's witch doctors, there's metal birds, like metal robot birds. There's all these things that exist in this mythology he gives us, right? And when you talk to people, like you go into different areas of the continent, you have people who have rituals, and they have a mythology that has to do with people coming from stars. And now, outside of the Dogon, everybody knows about the Dogon. You know? But when you go into Rwanda and you go into Zimbabwe, places like that, people are related to being part of the stars. In the transmigration of the soul, in some cultures, and I think in Zimbabwe, you go from being a human to being a bird, right? The highest level of transmigration of the soul is you become a star in the heavens, And so these are the kinds of ideas we're dealing with. I mean, even, you go back to Egypt, same thing. You find these fantastic stories that are essentially stories with tendencies of science fiction. I mean, what sort of force builds world? These are questions we ask ourselves in literature, in writing, in our heads, in our imaginations. Am I making sense?
Actually, yeah. You're making sense. I get it.
Okay.
Just I haven't heard about these other cultures talking about that. It's always the more well-known ones, like the Dogon, or the Egyptians, or the Aztecs.
Well, since we all migrated out of Egypt into different parts of Africa when the desert started spreading, it makes sense that there are within the Yoruba in Nigeria. Okay. They place some of their origins and beliefs in Egypt.
There's a lot of information coming out about that the languages are very much descended from the ancient Cometians, I like to call them, and Nubians. In fact, have you ever heard of Catherine Acholonu?
Catherine
Acholonu. I think it's ACHOLONU. Acholonu. I think that's how you spell it.
Acholoa?
Acholonu. I think it's ACHOLONU. Acholonu.
Oh. Yeah, I have actually.
Oh. Because I just heard about her maybe a couple weeks ago. Someone who also studies the ancient cosmology of the stars. He corresponded with her for 2 years before she died, and they both talk about how I think she had up to about 6 different books where she has this really interesting argument to link Nigeria with ancient Egypt, or Kemet, as I like to call it.
Well, yeah, I mean, the Yoruba religion has its origins in Islam. A lot of people don't know this.
Islam? But they predate Islam when they talk about their mythology, or am I wrong? Don't they predate Islam?
What?
I'm trying to figure out how would they get their ideas from Islam if they predate the creation of the Islamic religion.
Yoruba doesn't predate Islam.
I thought Islam was one of the
African spiritual traditions predate Islam. The conflict was over Africans who had embraced Islam continuing their African practices. Because they continued their African practices, they were outlaws. And all of the Orisha, the Yoruba religion, were once Islamic warriors. They battled against against Orthodox Islam. Their final battle was at Ile-Ife in Nigeria, which is the seat of Yoruba culture. The most sacred object in the Oni of Ife's temple or castle or home is an ancient Quran. All right, they're linked by rebellion, by the spirit of rebellion, by the people that rebelled against Islam. There's a film by Ousmane Sembène from Senegal, a Senegalese film. It's called Chedo. And what happens is you get to see how Islam came into Africa.
Spell that?
Some people do,
Spell that?
C-E-D-D-O. C-E-D-D-O.
C-E-D-E-O. Okay.
No, C-E-D for David, D for David, O. Shado.
Oh, Shado. Okay, C-E-D-D-O. Okay.
Yeah, Shado. It's like C-C-H, yeah. But it's C-E-D-D-O. By Usman Simban. That gives you an idea of how Islam came into Africa and the things that they did, which was not that much different from what Christianity did. Changed everybody's name.
Right.
Made you give up your spiritual practices. Changed the nature of your society. Before Islam and Christianity, land and wealth was descended through the woman's side of the family, not the man's side of the family, because Africa was pretty much a matriarchy.
Two questions.
That's a new one for you. I bet that's a new one for the Hebrew Israelites.
Huh.
And you know what I mean? And all these people who want to put women in a position of like powerlessness.
Okay, two questions. So you're saying the actual group of the Yoruba, they actually came after Islam came into West Africa? Is that what you're saying?
Yes.
Oh, okay. And when you say Africa was matriarchal, what do you mean? Was it the women ruling, or was it matrilineal? What does that mean exactly?
It was matrilineal.
Oh, because I know there's a difference between matriarchal and matrilineal.
And they did their power too.
Did you break that down for me?
And Islam managed to do was deprive women of power.
But you could also say that it also damaged the men too, because it created an imbalance of power and responsibility, right?
It totally damages the entire society. Yeah.
So when you say it was, go ahead.
There's a paper you can read called IFA, and I'm sorry. Let me start again. IFA and Islam as sibling rivals. The Black Arabian origins of the Yoruba.
IFA,
it's called IFA and Islam as sibling rivals. The Black Arabian origins of the Yoruba.
Okay, the Black Arabian origins.
And that's by Wesley Muhammad, PhD, written in 1913.
Wesley Muhammad. All right. And what does that talk about?
It talks about the Islamic origins of Yoruba and those two groups, Ifa and Islam. Okay, Ifa was a religion that Africans were essentially practicing back when Islam arrived. A lot of people became part of Islam because there was benefit in it. You know, you remember that the Islamics had this desert trade. That was it was an ass kicker, man. I mean, they were traveling across the country all the way to China, across the world all the way to China, with their trading goods back and forth. Coming over the Silk Road, man. The Silk Road came across Asia all the way into Europe and also went down in Africa. And I probably got some of that wrong because I didn't expect to really talk about that. But it all has to do with, your generation is searching, right? I'm 61. We went through all this when I was 12 and 13. Okay. I knew about this stuff because I was hanging around people in Chicago who talked about these things, right? So I was like deep into, because I left Christianity when I was 13 because I was given a choice, and my choice was, you know what, I'd rather do something else, and I did. My family wasn't happy, but for my own spirit, for the sake of my own spirit, that's what I did. And I explored Taoism, I explored all the different African religions. I just explored things, and to find what worked for me, because spirituality is an individual journey,
Exactly.
I mean, pretty much what Jesus did when he left Judaism. He went out into the world to find what worked for him. And there's a book that talks about his journey, and I can't remember the title of it now, but I think it's called the SN Chronicles.
The Who Chronicles?
And I'm looking it up.
Okay, sorry. That's fine.
Yeah. it's about Jesus's journey. I can't find it. It's about what happened to Jesus between the ages of 18 and 30 before he came back and came back and began to preach in the streets. Before he was crucified. You know, and because that's not a question that people deal with. But he went and talked to all the holy. You know, he talked to holy men all over the world. He went from where he was. He probably went on one of those journeys, on one of those caravans. You know, and he ended up in Asia, India, and China, and sat with all of these different people in search of this knowledge, and came back and shared that knowledge. I mean, he benefited from other religions, you know, and I mean, don't you find it interesting that the three major religions are all descended from Abraham? Exactly.
That's very interesting.
You know, they're all descended from Abraham, and you're at each other's throats for dominance. You know, it's crazy. It's absolutely crazy. Yeah, you know, when I went to Japan the first time, I thought it was real interesting because people don't go to church per se. They go to the temple. But they're always going to the temple. Matter of fact, there's there's a temple on every corner. There's a shrine on every corner almost, right? As you're walking down the street in Japan, you'll see like a little thing on the corner. You walk through this little doorway. There's a shrine in it, and you can burn some incense. There's a little Buddha in it. You can burn some incense. You know, like if you got a business deal you're trying to complete, you got a test at university or in middle school you have to take. People walk, they stop in there, do their little applications, and walk out the other side. You know, and that's what religion is like. I mean, it's ingrained in the culture to a point that you know what to do because you watch your parents do it, you watch your friends, you watch your uncles and aunts do it, right? But nobody tells you that you have to do it. They tell you the benefits of it, but nobody says that you have to do it. You know? So it isn't missionary style religion where you have to learn this, you have to learn that. You know, it's a different approach. And when people go to the temples on Sundays and things, they're not going to church. There's nobody preaching. It's basically to enjoy the grounds that they, you know, to do the same thing, to make their supplications, to wish for luck. Basically to say prayers. They go to say prayers. There's nobody leading prayers, you know, except in the temple, like the monks who will do this, and you can observe them, but you don't necessarily have to be a monk to go into the temple. But you can do that if you want to. You know what I mean? You've been walking off the street. You know, I know people that have gone to Thailand and walked into a temple and become a follower in that temple. American people, you know, African American people. Because people seek spirit, you know, wherever they can. But we're trying to get off the beaten track just a little bit.
I want you to go back to, if you have any more information about the spiritual systems of Africa before the invasion of Islam and Christianity, and more information about the matrilineal thing.
Well, you have to look it up because I'm not really a professor and I really can't speak to it with authority.
Okay.
But, you know, I can't speak to it with authority, but the research is... But if you look at matriarchy in Africa, it all comes through. It'll all pop up in Google.
But that's just the thing. Is it really a matriarchy, like what we think of, or was there something different? Because sometimes when people describe it,
what do you think? What do you think a matriarchy is?
To me, it always comes across as the women are like giving the orders, and everything is passed through the women's line only. The men really have no say-so in anything.
Who said that?
No, that's what comes across to me. But when they describe what it actually was, it doesn't sound matriarchal or patriarchal.
Well, hold on. Suppose it was. What's wrong with that?
I'm not saying it's wrong to. I'm just saying it gets confusing when it comes to what people say versus what they describe.
Yeah, I mean, like men rule. Okay, how absurd is it for men to have all the power to women?
Very.
There you go. So why is it that like, I'm not sure that I don't, I always wonder why that's a question. It's like, women have held power and they continue, and they will continue to hold power. And if they don't have and if they don't have overt power, they have covert power. When you go to Africa, the strength of African economies are the women. It's the women in the marketplaces. It's the women handling all the money. So as much power as these guys have, a lot of times they have to respond to what happens in the marketplace, and the women control the marketplace. But this thing about matrilineal societies where property and ownership would pass through the mother's side of the family, that was pretty much ongoing. But you've got people that'll say things like, "Oh, there were no matriarchies in pre-colonial Africa," right? And it's basically an anti-feminist kind of track that they're following, and that this whole thing to uplift. It's like dealing with white folks and slavery, or the history of white supremacy in America, or white supremacy in the world, right? That there was no time that we have no history, we've never controlled anything, we've never been in charge of anything. All of these kinds of opposing battles work out the same way, with the same kinds of arguments. And the thing about it is, no, Africans have we're not always slaves throughout the world, throughout all time. Every different culture has experienced some kind of slavery, some kind of captivity that was based on warfare.
That's true.
But you were able to, but in these other cultures, you were able to become a citizen of that. You were basically serving your time, serving these people who conquered you, but you could rise in this society. In some of these places, this country perfected slavery. They destroyed the language, they destroyed your culture, they made you totally beholden, they took away your music, took away your musical instruments, and you were totally beholden to them for all of your existence. It created, they tried to recreate us as another kind of servant beast, but it didn't work. And it never worked, and it never will work with human beings in that manner, So when we talk about women being in positions being in male-dominated societies where they're just as capable, if you look at how your mom handled your family, right, and helped your dad raise all of you, what is she not capable of?
Yeah, think about that.
You know what I mean? It's like we don't walk one in front of the other. We're supposed to walk side by side.
See, that's what I hear people describe, and when they say that doesn't sound matriarchal or patriarchal to me. It sounds like it's just a good balance of both.
Yeah, it's a good balance of both. But the thing about it was, yes, there was matrilineal.
You see,
like I said, I'm not a scholar. I'm not a professional, so I really can't explain it. So I don't want to get into the deep details on it. But I would encourage people to investigate it for themselves.
All right.
And don't go to maybe go to the library or somebody or some place and really get a variety of sources. Right. Because I'm not going to repeat what somebody's friend or somebody on the internet said. I'm not going to do that because those guys talking on the internet now will say guys talking on YouTube about this stuff will say anything. Because they have potential, they feel that they can say anything. And it's about shocking you. You know what I mean? Everybody is a surrogate preacher. They're not a surrogate teacher, they're a surrogate preacher. The preacher doesn't get questioned. Teachers get questioned, right? Preachers will allow you a few questions, but then interpret it and tell you why you're wrong. A teacher will encourage you to, why don't you check out this, and this, and then get an understanding, and then we can come back and discuss that.
Well, teachers are supposed to do that. Even teachers in the modern education system, they don't really do that.
Yeah. Well, I'm talking ideally, of course.
Okay.
I'm talking ideally. I mean, we live in a very screwed up world.
Yeah, we do.
In a very screwed up time. But see, this is where Afrofuturism kicks in.
Mm-hmm.
How do you recreate this world? You know, what do you do to recreate this world? What stories do you want to tell? What are you concerned about? You know, like, what do I take away from the books that I read, and what do you take away from the books that you read? You know, the first black characters in science fiction that I read was not by black writers, but white writers. Named Ray Bradbury. And Ray Bradbury wrote about African Americans in the Martian Chronicles in 1950.
Martian Chronicles. I've heard of that, but I haven't read it yet.
Right. Yeah. Well, there's a story in there. I think it was called The Other Foot. It took place in a southern town, and one day it turns out that the African Americans in America had created spaceships,
mm-hmm.
and they were going to fly all the black people in America to Mars, to resettle Mars.
To resettle Mars.
To settle in Mars.
Oh, okay, okay.
I'm sorry. Yeah. The story, The Other Foot, is about a group of African Americans in America building their own spaceships and going to colonize Mars.
Interesting.
And they're leaving, and this one town, everybody's leaving to go to Mars. And it's about how the white people react to their leaving.
Oh. Right.
They try to make them stay behind. They don't know what to do. They've lost control. You know, where once they thought their worlds are turning upside down because these African Americans are leaving. And it's a real interesting book, and I encourage people to read that story, The Other Foot. Then in The Tattooed Man, which he wrote a year later, he does another story about the same people that are on Mars, right? And it's called Way Up in the Middle of the Air, or Way in the Middle of the Air. And they have settled on Mars, and they've been there for 25 years. And the kids have grown up, and the people who came have grown old, and they're looking through a telescope one day, watching the Earth and getting the broadcast from Earth, and a third and final war breaks out. And the Earth is destroyed.
Wow.
And so the white people escape, and they're headed towards Mars in spaceships. And the black people have to decide what to do.
What's the name of that again?
Wait a minute, you know what, I might have the titles mixed up. I'm sorry, y'all. I'm like doing this off the top of my head. And so, one is called Way in the Middle of the Air, and the other one's called The Other Foot. The Other Foot I think The Other Foot is in Martian Chronicles. And Way in the Middle of the Air, where they leave the Earth, that's in
The Tattooed Man?
In the Tattooed, yeah. In The Illustrated Man. I'm sorry.
Oh boy. I'm going to have to look these up.
But this stuff is on the internet. People can look it up. Way in the Middle of the Air and The Other Foot by Ray Bradbury. And it's interesting because in The Illustrated Man, I think they left out they left that story out in the latest edition.
I gotta look these up. That's interesting.
I'm gonna look it up. I'm gonna look it up. Yeah, I think they left that story out of The Illustrated Man.
Okay, is it a collection of stories? I'm getting the titles mixed up. The Other Foot is what?
The Other Foot. The Other Foot is in the Martian Chronicles, right? Man has been colonized solely by black people. When they learn that a rocket is coming to Earth with white travelers, they constitute a Jim Crow system of racial segregation in retaliation for how white people have treated blacks over the years. When the spaceship lands, the traveler tells them that Earth has been destroyed, including all horrific mementos of racial discrimination, such as trees used for losing land. The blacks, feeling sorry for the white travelers losing their homes, decide to take them in. It ain't like that. You know, this thing is a real simplistic, but this story was left out.
I'm looking at it right now on Amazon. That's interesting. Yeah. I see both of them.
Yeah. Right. And of course they included in the 1969 film.
Okay, where's the Martian Chronicles? Or that's a volume?
No, the Martian Chronicles is the book is a book before. This is Ray Bradbury's Illustrated Man was Ray Bradbury's second book, I think.
I see that one.
Let me go and look at his.
I see The Other Foot. I see The Illustrated Man. I don't see anything else.
That's another book.
Okay, so.
Yeah, that's another book. I'm looking for his bibliography. All right, The Martian Chronicles. Okay, so he did The Martian Chronicles in 1950. Where does Illustrated Man come in? The novels were Martian Chronicles, 1950, and then Illustrated Man is 1951. Mm-hmm. Okay, which is a book with short stories. Okay, all of his, a lot of his books are basically short stories he's written. But Martian Chronicles. Hold on a second.
I see Martian Chronicles, Illustrated Man, and The Other Foot all on the same page.
Right. The Other Foot is a short story that's in Illustrated Man.
Okay.
Way in the middle of the air is...
Let me see.
Well, I hope you can edit this thing.
I'll try.
Because it isn't linear. It's like, it's just not linear at all. Yeah, The Martian Chronicles, way in the middle of the air. Way in the Middle of the Air stands out as being one of the only long stories in the novel that takes place on Earth. It explicitly directs a contemporary political comment that of racism in America. Keep in mind that the story first appeared in 1950, well before the Civil Rights Movement. In some ways, the story brings up some of Bradbury's weaknesses because the characters are no longer so fantastic, and we can compare them to real life models. For example, Teese's racism seems wooden. That's a white guy. And anyway, you need to read the story and interpret it for yourself. The mass exodus of Negroes is what this thing about. Mass exodus from the South, from the rural South to Mars. Right?
That's interesting.
Yeah. It's interesting. It doesn't. But people need to read the story and then discuss these stories, right? Because I can give analysis all day long, and we all get different things out of it.
What do you think of Octavia Butler? Have you read any of her stuff or no?
Oh, most of it.
What did she write?
Yeah,
I've been hearing about her for the past year or so, but I haven't read any of her stuff yet.
I read these books so long ago that I'm not really. I don't call myself an authority on talking about the books at all.
Okay.
But what I remember from reading Octavia Butler, because I haven't read her in years, I remember reading Pattern Master, right? Pattern Master, and I remember reading, what is it? Mind of My Mind. And all of the stories deal with her as she's sort of an outsider. Right? Mm-hmm. She exists as an outsider observing the world. Right? She's really not part of it, but she makes commentary on the things that she sees and how she reacts to these things. And it's a constant pulling away, right? Because the world is pretty much a screwed up place. There's a lot of I'm at a loss to really discuss her with any authority. It's just like I just don't. Maybe 5 years ago I might have. I might have posited myself as an authority on this stuff, but I've learned enough now to know how much I don't know.
Okay.
And all I can do is direct people to places to do their own study. But it's, I think it's important that people read Octavia Butler, and especially things like Mind of My Mind, and look at the characters, the African characters she creates. How she spans time and distance. She goes from ancient Africa, immortal ancient Africans to contemporary prophets, on the road after the world has hit an apocalypse. She has a character who's married to a white guy who ends up pulled into the past to save her white grandfather. Or her white great-great-grandfather who rapes her mother, who rapes her great-great-grandmother. Because if this man dies, she won't exist. So she has to go back and save his ass every time his life is threatened. she's pulled from the future into the past to save them. And when she's pulled into the past, she'll be there for 2 months, 2 weeks, a year.
Wow.
And when she goes back, hardly any time has passed. And I'm 61, man. My memory's failing me.
It's okay.
I can remember stories, but I can't remember a damn title, man. What's up? What's up with aging? Somebody tell me quick. But I'm gonna go find the names of those books so that people can have them. Mm-hmm. Octavia Butler bibliography.
Now, what was the last event that you had? It was January 4th, right?
Yeah. We had an event, or was it the 7th? Oh, I'm sorry. It was the 4th. God, how did that happen? Yeah. That was about visioning, right? That was about visioning the world. It's like, how do you interpret the world? What do you want the world to be like, right? Mm-hmm. It's like, if we can't imagine another world, how do we make one? If we can imagine what we want, how do we know what to fight for? And Natasha ran that article. We got quite a few people out, and it was it's something that I think a lot of people ought to try. To talk about a new world and what that world will be like, and what you're willing to do to make it happen. Okay, I've got Octavia's bibliography in front of me. Wild Seed was the first one that I read back in 1980, and then Mind of My Mind and Clay's Ark, Survivor, and Pattern Master. That was from 1976 to 1980. That's when I was introduced to her work. I was already reading a lot of science fiction, and I ran into these books in the bookstore because they had black characters on the cover.
Nice.
That was something that you didn't rarely see. We went and bought paperback books all the time. Science fiction was usually just in front of the portal.
Dang.
And and I didn't need the porn, but I did need the science fiction.
Yeah, that must have been awkward.
That's right. Well, no, it was awkward for me because I had a girlfriend. So I didn't worry about this stuff.
Okay.
So I was young and crazy, But yeah. So what can I say about it? Read this stuff. The Pattern series, right? She did her books in series. First was a Pattern series, right? That talked about people with this section of humanity that had psychic powers, and how they survive in the world, and how they try to change and have some influence over the world, right? The second series is Genesis, which is about the destruction of humanity and how the survivors of humanity are integrated into an alien race. And then the parable novels, which is another post-apocalyptic duo of novels about this woman who becomes a prophet. At the end of the world, they're traveling. People are traveling the roads looking for subsistence and looking for food because the place is really, really kind of messed up. But the book that really I think got everybody was Kindred. That's the one that I was telling you about. Kindred was the story of an African American woman who was shifted back in time to the antebellum South to save her racist, rapist, great-great-great-grandfather who raped her grandmother, so that basically for some reason to keep the universe in balance or whatever.
Wow.
But she saves his life every time.
Wow.
And yeah.
Okay.
And it was written in 1979.
Kindred. Okay.
Yeah. So.
Now you have another event in February the 8th, I think.
February, we're doing our Afrofuturism film series. We're just calling it the Black Future Film Series.
Okay.
And it's going to be at Chatham Theater. And we're going to bring films, we're going to show a series of films that deal with aspects of black science, black scientists, science fiction, comic books, sort of a festival of the imagination, a festival of black imagination, or black radical imagination. We're also going to show Black Radical Films, a part of the Black Radical Film Series, which is a film series put together by Amir George here in Chicago, who was at the Art Institute. And he brings together all of these experimental short films and of various types, and we're going to screen those one Thursday. The series is going to go over four Thursdays in February. Yeah.
Cosmic Africa, screening and discussion, event details, co-production between Cosmo Studios, Land Pictures, and Ann Rogers. Oh, okay.
Yeah. So so that's going to be changing. I'm going to be sorting it out over the next couple of days.
Oh, so this isn't accurate. It's going to be updated.
No. That's accurate. Oh, I didn't include the Thursday screenings because when I did that, I wasn't. Yeah, I do a lot of writing and stuff, and so I was in the middle of a screenplay, and I'm in the middle of another screenplay now, and I'm trying to do everything. Because people are paying me, and I have to make sure that I'm on point. With the bread and butter stuff a lot of times, because this is like unpaid work.
I see.
Yeah.
I got a couple more questions for you. The event that you had in December, there were these two stories that you were talking about, but I can't remember what they were. There's one written about some type of troll creature. Was it Imaro? Imaro is a sword and sorcery novel written by Charles R. Saunders. That sounds familiar. Oh,
Charles Saunders. Right. Charles Saunders is a veteran, man. He's like the guy that's been doing these, these kind of like these black fantasy novels that kind of like Conan, and actually the Edgar Rice Burroughs people tried to sue him over one of his covers because he makes these kind of adventuristic, very powerful characters the way Edgar Rice Burroughs did with Tarzan, and he does Imoro as sort of like an ancient tribal Conan. That's all I can say. It's a Conan story. Imoro was written in 1881. But he had been writing throughout the 70s, but he couldn't get published, so he published his own stuff.
Ah, okay.
Yeah. He's written a lot of essays back in the 70s. And he came, and he found a publisher eventually, and boom.
And I remember this other story about somewhere in Europe, someone was fighting some giant monster. But I can't remember which one you were talking about.
I don't remember that. But you can get Charles Saunders' books online. You can just go to reindeermotel.com.
Reindeermotel.com, okay.
Reindeermotel.com. Wait a minute, hold on. This is weird. Hold on a second. 7 lucky stars. What is this? I'm looking at it. Just look up Charles R. Saunders.
Okay.
He's got a new novel on sale now.
Ooh, okay.
Yeah, it's called Abingoni. The debut of Abingoni, First Calling, represents the latest step along the meandering journey that I call my writing career. It was during the early 90s that the Abingoni concept arrived in my mind. That was the time something of a lull in my literary life. Yeah. So let me see what it is. Anyway, people should look it up. He's still around, and I mean, this is exciting. I'm hoping we're able to have an event where we get to invite all these people.
That'd be nice.
The new writers, to talk about what they do. And when you look at the artwork on his books, they're all fantastical, and you look at them all. You look at him and he's got that, that like husky Conan look. and he's got the well-toned body sister at his feet. It's traditional, fantasy adventure film fashion, not standing next to him, but at his feet, sitting on the ground looking sexy. Women don't fight like that, It's funny. Yeah.
Oh, I remember this one story you were telling back in the December event. Do you have time to tell it? This one where you were talking about I think you said it was in London, where these independent or producers were like trying to make their own music outside the record companies, and the record companies didn't like that.
Well, no, I think I was talking about pirate radio.
Yeah, pirate radio. You have time to talk about that?
Talking about pirate radio. Yeah, everybody had a pirate radio station in England. In
England,
back in the 70s. I mean, not just London. In England, man, pirate radio was big. I think it started in the UK back. It started in the UK really, really big in the 1960s. And they still got about 150 pirate radio stations now. But in the 1960s, they had like I remember hearing about Radio Caroline and Radio London, right? That and they were playing rock music, underground music. Radio Caroline was being broadcast from a ship that was off the coast of Essex back in 1964, and it was Radio Luxembourg. There were, how do I say this? I'm sorry, man. I just wasn't as prepared as I needed to be for this.
It's okay. Don't worry about it.
The pirate radio from the 60s, when it got to, they didn't play reggae on the radio at all in England.
Okay.
There was a period when they didn't play reggae at all. They weren't playing hardly any black music except for Motown.
Oh.
So they had reggae came on one day a week, or maybe 2 nights a week, one time on Radio London, or like Black Londoners on Sunday afternoon that I used to listen to, and then maybe one Thursday night or something on another channel. So basically, people set their own broadcast stations in their neighborhoods, started taking advertising, and started making money, right? And they would cut down the radio stations, and they would shut them down and take the equipment. And the equipment was so cheap to do radio broadcasting, and they would have enough money to go out and buy some other equipment, like overnight, and be up and running in somebody else's apartment the very next time. The very next week. Or if not the very next day. Some people had 2 kids, two broadcast kids. So it didn't matter to them that they were being shut down, because they were always able to take that back up. And that's sort of that's sort of a model that I kind of liked. And it's something that, when I talk about being on the internet,
right,
we have the opportunity to do everything we want to on the internet. It doesn't even have to be pirate, unless we lose network neutrality.
Yeah,
right now we're free to do whatever we want to in terms of giving people information we want them to have, giving them access to films, and we don't do it enough. We keep waiting on somebody else. We keep waiting to be discovered.
That whole waiting to be discovered, that's pretty much dead now with YouTube and Facebook and everything.
Yeah,
it's like people just grow up on their own.
Discovered. They're still waiting to be discovered. It's like it's up to us to go out and raise the resources we need in order to do the projects that we want to do.
Right.
That's the bottom line. That's the bottom line. Because you see what happens when you get their money. It's like now, Ava DuVernay makes an incredibly wonderful film, and they're upset because LBJ wasn't portrayed the way that they would have portrayed LBJ.
What film was that?
Selma.
Ah, Selma. Okay.
Selma. So we're kind of in it on our own. Are you going to be able to edit this?
Yeah, I'm going to edit it.
You know what? If you find that you don't have, if you can't edit this properly, write down the questions and ask me specific questions based on what we talked about today, then it'll be easy. But that's only if you have a problem editing.
I think I'll be able to edit this, no problem.
Okay.
But
because I'm kind of like all over the place. I'm kind of like all over the place. Because really, what Afrofuturism is about, it's sort of like a unifying field, right? It's where all of these ideas come together. All of these speculative and fictional ideas come together. It's coming out of our reality,
or it's coming from a very
this filter of fiction.
Or you could say that's coming out like. I was gonna say, like, I think I remember Yatasha defined it as looking at an alternative or futuristic world from a very black diasporic standpoint.
Yeah, we can say that.
Okay.
We can say that.
I think that's it for now. I enjoyed this. I hope you enjoyed it also.
Okay, thank you.
Could you put out your website and your
editing it? Because we've been all over the place, man. We've been around the world.
I think that's a good thing. I like being all over the place, I guess.
Yeah, okay.
But could you
all right, man.
Put up your contacts and your website so people can find you? What are they?
The website is Afrofuturism849. Oh, hold on. Hold on, just a second. Okay. Yeah. Hold on just a second. I've got to.
I'll see if I can link to the website when I get this uploaded.
Yeah, okay. Afrofuturism849. And my email address is floydwebb@gmail.com.
Okay.
Afrofuturism849.com and floydwebb@gmail.com.
Nice.
If anybody's got any questions, give me a call. Or rather, send me an email.
That'll work.
Okay.
Thanks for being on the show. Nice talking to you.
Okay, man. So we'll be in touch. Are you coming out again?
I'm definitely going to try to make the February 8th show or event.
Okay.
All right.
Okay. Okay. Talk to you soon.
You have a nice night, man.
Okay, bye-bye.
Right. And that is it for episode 2 of Obsidian Radio. Please check out Obsidian Radio or Obsidian-Radio.com for any more info or uploads or episodes of the show. That was my guest, Floyd Webb of Afrofuturism849.com. We'll talk to you next time. Peace. That's the end of this episode of Obsidian Radio with your host, Najee. Thank you all for listening. I hope you learned from it and enjoyed. Please check out the Obsidian Radio YouTube channel and Google Plus page for episodes of the show. Also check out the RoboMan5 YouTube channel and Google Plus page for my rants, blogs, show episodes, and my original music. And finally, check out the Obsidian Radio website for episodes of the show and episode archives. Please like, share, subscribe, and or donate to be a part of this radio show. And there will be more enlightening and entertaining episodes posted soon. Peace.